Hello, puppies and kittens, and welcome to another episode of Blasphemers Bible. Today we are joined by the usual panel. We got Aaron Raw, we got Tomer, we got Isaac and Ember. And today we are covering Deuteronomy 21 plus some other chapters, perhaps.
You missed the most important person, Lawrence.
I don't know that guy. Aaron, do you have any commentary? Anything to begin with today?
I didn't realize that I spoke like a villain.
You forgot to plug the Patreon.
Lawrence thinks he's
Make
he's
sure
the
you join
wayward
the
son.
Patreon, because I can't do it without your support because YouTube is a piece of shit. Let's go.
Okay. Somebody tone back Lawrence's medication. All right, got a first comment already. Daniel Gable says, Aaron Ra, these Bible studies are a lot more fun than anything I got when I was still involved in religion. Well, thank you for sharing that. I am having quite a bit of fun with it too. I was told yesterday in a Facebook religion argument page, somebody again told me that I should go read the Bible.
We also have to acknowledge
Maybe we should.
We also have to acknowledge they put in that comment before Lawrence did the introduction. So there is that.
Yeah.
See, Lawrence, that's what you get.
Yep.
That's what I get. That's what I get for being goated.
All right, there's another comment. Okay, I'm going to just ignore that one.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. First question I have is, Tomer.
Yes.
Have you finished your commentary?
Fuck off. No, but actually, this chapter is, I have 8 pages of commentary on this because there's a lot to say.
Oh, crap. Well, let's get started then. And who's reading today?
I can. I got my thingy working.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't want to hear you about your personal
very
issues.
appropriate.
But I'm glad you found Viagra.
Oh. Yeah, you can finish this chapter as 23 verses.
Okay.
Aye. If someone is found slain, lying in a field in the land the Lord your God is giving you to possess, it is not known who the killer was. Your elders and judges shall go out and measure the distance from the body to the neighboring towns. Then the elders of the town nearest the body shall take a heifer that has never been worked and never worn a yoke, and lead it down to a valley that has not been plowed or planted, and where there is a flowing stream. There in the valley they are to break the heifer's neck. Levitical priests shall step forward, for the Lord your God has chosen them to minister and to pronounce blessings in the name of the Lord and to decide all cases of dispute and assault. Then all the elders of the town nearest the body shall wash their hands over the heifer whose neck was broken in the valley, and they shall declare, Our hands did not shed this blood, nor did our eyes see it done. Accept this atonement for your people, Israel, whom you have redeemed, Lord, and do not hold your people guilty of the blood of an innocent person. Then the bloodshed. What's that?
I'm sorry, before you move on to the next verse, the fuck was this supposed to accomplish?
I have a comment on this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a question.
The
Right?
rational explanation, according to Rombs,
how does it matter if it's a heifer? How does it matter what sex the cow is or whatever? Why does it matter that it's in the body? Why does it matter the kind of injury? Why does it matter that you have to dip your hands in the blood? What the fuck does any of that have to do with anything? How does it solve anything? How does it identify who the killer is? How does it absolve anybody of guilt? How the fuck is any of this anything?
Yeah.
This is stupid.
But in the ancient world, they had different concepts of what it meant to, like if you had a certain blemish in some way, there were different like levels of what that meant. So they, of course, were reading into it things that we would just not do anymore. But they had their own kind of mentality when it came to what all this stuff meant. And like reading a text like this, yeah, if like on the face of it we can look at it and be like, this is dumb as shit, but it also tells us, you know, kind of how they separated these things.
This is the
Wouldn't-
good book. This is the word of God. This is infinite loving wisdom and forgiveness and mercy and intelligence. This is a supreme being writing this stupid shit.
Wouldn't it be easier for Yahweh to just tell the high priest who the killer was?
Wouldn't it be easier if Yahweh was actually doing this shit, not to go through any of this crap, which means absolutely nothing? Waste a good cow for no fucking reason. That's what this is saying.
Even better,
Right.
keep a cow ready just in case you need to waste one, because you can't yoke it or work it or do any of that crap. You have to have it ready to go.
I'm glad you
Hmm.
remembered that, because I thought about that when I heard it. I'm like, well, what difference does it make whether it ever worn a yoke or not?
It's something about purity, and then
Well, there
in-
are some explanations to it.
Yeah.
I have a comment on this.
yeah.
Yeah, the main like rational explanation I think given and
Jewish
Randy brings it up,
rational.
yeah, is the idea that I mean the actual ritual itself, the particulars as you say aren't really explained.
There they
They might
go.
have symbolic meaning, but the actual reason to have the ritual in the first place, it might have something to do with, you know, like kind of rooting out the real murderer, or you know, maybe if the city, you know, if there was a conspiracy, the city elders knew who it was. If they had to go out and proclaim, you know, we don't know, we are innocent, blah blah blah, it would make them more, I don't know, more guilty because they then swear kind of that they don't know. And I don't know, people might, you know, people who might not have known that there was a murder, they're like, why is there going on? Why are they killing a cow? What's going on? Ah, there was a murder. Oh, I was there. I saw something. You know, so that's kind of the rational explanation given, but they don't know for sure.
Now, this is also
Um,
like, you know, kind of ritual sacrifice for blood guilt, because someone in your community killed someone. You kind of have to atone for that, and this was their way of doing that.
And yeah, also on top of that, there's also the idea that the elders, the city elders and whatsoever, are supposed to be responsible for this sort of event. Like, you know, it's your fault if the roads are dangerous near your towns, stuff like that. So it is kind of the fault of the council, you could say, of elders, that this unknown murder happened. So it's, you know, and
So
also it
when-
seems to be that there's some Levitical trying to get involved in these local politics as well.
I like how often it is that these people say that they're biblical literalists. They believe that every word of the Bible is God breathed, until you corner them on something utterly ridiculous, and then they say that you don't have to take it absolutely literally, right? Because there's always that kind of excuse. Don't take it so seriously, whatever. It doesn't have to be absolutely literal. But then you come to this. How is this wisdom? How is this mercy? How is this intellect? How is there anything of value in this statement? Nobody believes this. Start off with. It's just ridiculous. So what's the excuse that people give for why they don't still follow this obvious nonsense?
I think a lot of, at least the Christians I've talked to, they're like, well, you know, we just have better ways of doing things now, which I would agree with. But at the same time, yeah, this was a specific law given for a specific community. So they also give the whole, like, well, it wasn't written for our communities now. At least that's what you get for the more liberal Christians. And I would say that the only value this holds now is like some anthropological value, in that we have learned more about what these people did in their time and place, and that is really the most value I can see out of it today.
That is a really good point.
The only value I see in it is well, this is proof that we're smarter now than they were then.
Well, that too, yes. But the way they go about it, how the whole community has to sacrifice to show that they're not guilty, shows this cultural zeitgeist that people are guilty by default, which kind of jives with that whole original sin thing.
Indeed. I've got a couple comments before Tomer takes off again. So Bryce Barnett says, Lawrence, when will the new young earth creationists be joining the panel? I'd love to hear them not finish their Jesus commentary.
Well, I'm not sure. I can message him, see with the with classes being out, if he can, because usually he does the whole like preaching, handing out Jesus pens on campus thing on Tuesdays. So, and I think for the Saturday show, it's too early for him. That's so funny. I think it's the Saturday shows are usually too early for him, but I think he could make the Tuesday ones. But I'm gonna message him and see. Has your schedule cleared up now that no one's on campus? So I feel like if he really wants to spread the good word, he should join us.
Yeah, I have to apologize. The reason my dogs keep going off, and the reason the dogs all around the neighborhood keep going off, is they're all warning us of this most terrible of all threats, the postman.
That's fair. They're doing their job.
Yeah. All right, the next comment is Daniel Gable says, reading the Bible was what set me on the path to being an atheist. That is a common statement. And then Matt White, as a matter of fact, that's the number one reason. There was an informal poll done, and I want to do this again at the next convention of American Atheists, but there was an informal poll done at one of them before I started showing up there, where they were talking about all these atheists who were raised Christian. They're American atheists, so almost all of them were raised to be Christian. What is the catalyst that changed their minds? The tertiary answer was scientific evidence. That came in third place. More commonly, the second most popular answer, with the thing that turned people away from Christianity, was the hypocrisy of the church. Things like when your gay-hating pastor is caught having sex with a man in a van out front of the church. Things like that. And we see it happen a lot, right?
That Moms Against Liberty person, or Moms for Liberty, or whatever the fuck her group is. The teacher from Sarasota who has been like stomping on gay students for years and got caught having sex with a woman. I mean, no shame from me, but the hypocrisy, holy crap.
And of course, the Catholic priests and the little boys and the evangelical youth pastors, all of that. So that was the second most popular answer. And of course, number one, far and away, I read the Bible. That's the number one reason that American former Christians became atheist. All right, so Matt White says, let's see, Aaron, the reason for this inconsequential detail is cult thought control. See Owen Morgan / Telltale Atheist on the Bite model. I should have to check that out. I haven't seen that, but I mean, I get.
That's not Owen's thing. Owen just references it because it's super useful. It stands for something. It's like I forget the B, but it's information. The E is emotion. It's like basically it's a mechanism for controlling people's lives so that they can't leave the cult.
Of course.
So someone made an interesting comment about like why all of these extra details, more or less. Like, well, if it was just sacrificing a cow or whatever, no one would notice. I'd be like, oh, they're just killing another cow. Like they do that all the time. So it had to be like weird so that it would come to people's attention.
Yeah, it'd have to be like maybe outside of like a holiday or something in order for it to be noticeable. At least in this
it's also
way,
the
right?
place.
Because you have the elders and the judges doing it. Yeah, then your elders and your judges shall come out to measure the distances of the towns. Yeah, so that's part of it.
Okay, and then we got a new comment from Trevor and Wright, who says animal sacrifices in the Bible is an endless theodicy of suffering. Surely this God possesses zero superior intellect. Yes, the Bible is the work of an inferior being.
He is a bit bloodthirsty.
Indeed. And stupid. We need to have stupid. Okay, Tomer, please. Oh wait, no, wait. Who? Ember, you're the one reading. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. All right.
I think you didn't finish 9.
I thought he did.
Then
But I'm reading the NRSV, so
Um,
yeah, I'm
I
partway through 8.
yeah, I remember he didn't read 9.
Yeah. Then the bloodshed will be atoned for, and you will have purged from yourselves the guilt of shedding innocent blood, even though you literally just shed innocent blood, since you have done what is right in the eyes of the Lord. When you go to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God delivers them into your hands, and you take captives, if you notice among the captives a beautiful woman, and are attracted to her, you may take her as your wife. Bring her into your home, and have her shave her head, trim her nails, and put aside the clothes she was wearing when captured. After she has lived in your house and mourned her father and mother for a full month, then you may go to her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. If you are not pleased with her, let her go wherever she wishes. You must not sell her or treat her as a slave, since you have dishonored her.
all right. We're not going to make much progress because
Yeah, well, yeah, I think we should be breaking this up into
There's
parts.
a lot in this one, yeah.
There is a lot.
Yeah.
I mean,
The most significant one to me is just because from what I do, the most significant thing is where you have her, shave her head, and it also says, I think your translation was a little bit different. The SBL Study Bible has this as she shall shave her head and par her nails. But either way, like hair, nails, how, and then it says, throw away her garb and whatnot.
Yeah,
Those were all cultural things, right? Like the way someone wore their hair was often an identifying factor by ancient cultures, or the color of a people's hair or something like that. Like you see this in Greek literature and Egyptian literature, it was everywhere. So by shedding that stuff, you are shedding their foreignness, essentially.
yeah, the Hebrew is asta, and literally she made. She made, so you can literally read it. She made her fingers. Fingernails, sorry. She made her
Oh, okay.
fingernails, and it can be taken either as to trim or as to grow. The interpretations and translations differ.
Sure.
So I have
There's kind of like two opposing views, which are both kind of traditionally held. One is that you make her ugly, so you shave her head, you let her her nails grow, and you give her new clothes so that she's not wearing the clothes that you saw. That would have maybe that's what made you attracted to her or whatever. And she cries in your house so that you become you see her every day, and you get and after all that you still want to marry her, then it's okay to marry her, but otherwise you should get rid of her.
okay, so
And
she's
then
a prisoner of war. You've just killed her whole family. She's basically a fucking slave, right?
mhm.
Well,
She
you could say
doesn't
that,
have
but
any.
then it also says, but
they
you
don't care
shouldn't
about this.
have her.
Isn't about consent. This is not a good thing for you to want her. You need to prove that the reason why you want her is for pure purposes and not because she's pretty. And therefore, you have to endure her with shaved head, long nails, and
Oh no, I have to
yeah,
endure the girl whose
and
family
her
I
wailing
killed.
and crying for a month straight. And then the other view is like completely opposite, which is like you shave her hair because it's dirty, you give her new clothes because it's ritual purity, stuff like that, and she cuts her nails rather than let them grow, and it's like yeah, and I think the whole
Look,
point of
I'm
it is
totally
just that
down.
she
I'm
converts
totally
willingly.
down with like stripping off all of her her traditional family garb or whatever you want to go, her cultural garb for whatever reason you want to. Oh, it's a cultural thing. They're a wrong tribe. They wear their clothes the wrong way. I don't care. Naked is good. We can work with that. But shave your head.
yeah, that's a warning sign.
That's yeah. So
That's one interpretation, at least.
yeah, the one interpretation is that you literally make her ugly because you need to kind of show that you want to marry her for pure purposes, and the other one is you need to prepare her ritualistically, purity.
You murdered her family
Yeah.
to steal her stuff. And the only redemption she will have is if you show her kindness, but it better be for pure reasons.
Yeah, they had a different definition of pure. Yeah, but yeah, to me, this reads like
Yeah.
they're shedding her cultural identity, which is why
Yeah.
at
Ritual
the
purity,
end,
conversion
you must
process,
not
possibly.
you must not
Yeah.
treat her as a slave since you have dishonored her. So there is this. So for me, this reads as rather shed her of her cultural identity and give her a new cultural identity.
If you want, I can start my commentary because you wanted me to. You wanted to do it in parts. So
Yeah, you should start.
yeah, so I'll start on the first part. On verse 2, your elders and judges. McCarthy notes that in the previous chapter, we find officials in Hebrew shotrim instead of judges, as seen in verses 5, 8, and 9, as well as in 29, 9, 31, 28, Numbers 11, 16. The Samaritan text in verse 2 therefore reads, your elders and officials. The Septuagint reads, the council of elders and the judges. And Targums Jonathan, 2 of the sages from the chief court of judgment, and 3 of your judges. Sa'ad Gaon reads, some of your elders. On verse 3, the town nearest the body. Tigay comments, the nearest town has the responsibility to purge the blood guilt. This reflects a practice common in the ancient Near East that the town in or near which a crime took place was required to indemnify the victim or his survivors, since the perpetrator most likely came from there. See Code of Hammurabi 23-24 and Hittite 6. Even in cases of murder, ancient Near Eastern law was more often concerned with financial responsibility than with purgation of the blood guilt. There are, however, Hittite rites for purifying a city after murder and other crimes. Biblical law, on the other hand, presumes that it is impossible to compensate for loss of life. Hence, it makes no provisions for compensating the survivors. Its concern is with jeopardy in which the nation is placed by the unrequited blood that was shed in its midst. On the heifer in the same verse, in Hebrew it's eglah. According to the halacha, seen in Maimonides, Mishneh Torah, Murder and the Preservation of Life 10.2, this refers to a calf in its first or second year, as seen in Leviticus 9.3 and Micah 6.6. Although in other texts, like Genesis 15.9 and Isaiah 7.21, it refers to a more mature cow. It can refer to a more mature cow. Based on this, Nelson writes that the traditional translation, heifer, is misleading and should be read a young cow. On verse 4.
I mean, as far as I understand, the English word heifer means a cow that hasn't calved yet. So not a calf themselves that are old enough to. They are an actual cow. They're an adult, maybe, but they have never had any children. So they're called a heifer.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
On verse 4, a valley, the Hebrew it's Nachal Eitan. The word Nachal has generally been read as either Wadi, according to JPS, Lundbom, and Nelson, valley in the KJV, or torrent, according to BDB Dictionary. Lundbom comments of the word Eitan. The meaning of this expression has been in doubt from earliest times. Rashi and Sa'ad Gaon rendered Eitan as hard, which has the support of Targum readings. The Septuagint translates a rugged wadi, and the Vulgate rough and rocky valley. But Aquila, who rendered it unrelenting torrent of water, and also Maimonides, a river that flows with might, anticipate more recent scholars who compare with the Arabic watana to be constant or unfailing, giving Eitan the now widely accepted meaning of enduring or perennial. Elsewhere in the Old Testament, the term describes rocks, Numbers 24:21, mountains in Micah 6:2, pastures, Jeremiah 49:19, 50:44, rivers, Psalm 74:15, and streams, Amos 5:24. The rite needs to be carried out where running water is available, although this could pose a problem in Israel, where many wadis have water only in the rainy season and are dry as bone in summer. About break the heifer's neck, Nelson comments that breaking the cow's neck signals that this ritual is not intended to be a sacrifice. He He suggests that the slaughter is intended to be a dramatic reenactment of the murder, since according to the elders, it is specifically the blood, quote unquote, of which they are innocent, in verse 7. He notes other suggestions. The killing of the cow is a vicarious or symbolic execution of the unknown murderer, or a dramatic act representing what would happen to these oath-taking elders if they are lying.
So it's worse than I thought it was.
It usually is.
On verse 6, wash their hands over the heifer. Tigay writes that hands full of blood are a well-known symbol of guilt, and washing the hands is a sign of innocence, as seen in Isaiah 1:15-16, Psalms 26:6, 73:13, and Matthew 27:24. Nelson writes that the hand washing seems to be intended as a ritual of transfer that concentrates the free-floating, quote-unquote, blood guilt onto the cow. Through the means of flowing water, the elders transfer onto the animal's carcass whatever measure of guilt that geographical nearness has brought their city. This, quote, constantly running, unquote, water may also be understood as transporting away the guilt. The Septuagint and Temple Scroll 63:5 read, over the head of the heifer. And McCarthy notes Weber's opinion that the Septuagint was influenced by Exodus 29:10, 15, and 19, where the priests placed their hands on the animals before slaughter to symbolically transfer guilt onto the beast. This view makes sense, since according to the Septuagint, the animal is not dead, but hamstrung in verse 4, and so the guilt is transferred to a living cow rather than a dead one.
What?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The stupid just got stupider.
Yeah. There
And the
are
evil got more cruel.
there are actual like additions to this which say things like the first, they don't hit the cow on the neck to kill it first, they just like hit it softly, and then it wanders away and you follow it, and then if it stops outside a random house, then you know the murderer is from that house, and then you kill it.
That's some fine
Oh.
detective work.
And there's
Yeah.
another version of this where you kill it, and then the body brings up worms, because we know that dead bodies spontaneously, what's the word, generate worms, and then the worms will find the murderer.
Dude, worms they're so dope. They're so OP. Yeah.
All this is
the
so much
worms are
easier
after
than
me.
Yahweh just saying who done it.
The worms are after me. Run away. Oh, I guess I could just walk casually.
Yeah. On verse 7, our eyes did not see it done. The Hebrew Bible reads, our eyes did not see. It does not specify what was not seen. Tigay notes that because of the ambiguity of the declaration, the Mishnah in Sotah 9:6 interpreted it as a broad denial of communal negligence, meaning he is not someone who came to us and we sent him away. We did not see him and leave him. The Babylonian Talmud in Sotah 45b understood it as referring to the victim, whilst the Jerusalem Talmud in Sotah 9:6 took it as referring to the killer. Maimonides in Mishneh Torah Murderer 9:3 accepted the Babylonian Talmud's interpretation. Now about the captive woman. On verse 10, Lundbom comments, this must be a battle with a distant enemy, not one of the Canaanite peoples. The Cherem law applies to wars with the Canaanites, as seen in 7:2 and 20:12-16. And even if women in some Canaanite cities survive, Israelites are forbidden under any circumstances to intermarry with them, as seen in 7:3. But Israelite men took foreign wives throughout their history. Joseph married the daughter of an Egyptian priest who bore him Ephraim and Manasseh in Genesis 41:50-52. Moses married the daughter of a Midianite priest in Exodus 2:16-22. And Solomon married women from everywhere, his Ammonite wife bearing him Rehoboam, seen in 1 Kings 14:21. But Solomon violated the Mosaic law by marrying a Sidonian who was a Canaanite. This did not pass unnoticed by the Deuteronomic historian, 1 Kings 11:1-2, who also did not look kindly on Ahab's marriage to the Sidonian Jezebel in 1 Kings 16 verses 30-31. In Deuteronomy, it simply states that kings must not multiply wives, 17:17, not refrain from marrying foreign wives.
If only these verses weren't, contradictory and things.
Yeah. And then Iconoker brings up a point that I meant to bring up, but there were a lot of distractions, interruptions, and everything. I didn't get all of it out. But thank you, Iconoker, for reminding me that none of this is about consent. Like ever. Whenever consent is brought up at all, it's always to increase punishment. So the girl, because that's what we're talking about here. If you say a beautiful woman, we're not talking about somebody in that time period or whatever in their 30s. That's not a thing. Right? We're talking about if she was old enough for college, she was elderly in this culture. So we're talking about a girl whose entire family has been slaughtered, everything has been stolen. She is part of the livestock. She has no choice. She doesn't get to consent. She doesn't get to reject. The choice is not even up to her. Hey, we've taken everything else you own. We're also going to take your clothes and your hair, and you better be happy about it.
You're alive. Say thank you.
Yeah, I think there is like a later commentary that says like that the ritual, the process is more about getting her to convert, and if she doesn't convert, he's technically allowed to marry her, but it's not like it's not the desired outcome.
Yeah, I wonder what kind of a
Should
relationship
reject
you
her.
have with somebody. Does she try even harder to please you, the guy who murdered her entire family, if she knows that if she doesn't please you, that you're going to murder her too? Because why not? Because this is a book of morality, family values.
Yep.
Now, on verse 11, a beautiful woman, the Hebrew it's Eshet Yefat Toar. Lundbom writes that in wartime, women would dress up in their finery to make themselves attractive to enemy soldiers, particularly if defeat was imminent. Here, the reference is to a woman possessed of natural beauty, who has better than average chance of escaping the indignities commonly suffered by women in wartime. Origen, in homilies on Leviticus 7:6-7, took the beautiful woman to be figurative for the spoils of pagan learning, from which all that is worthless must be cut away.
Wow, Origin.
That first part of what you said, that reminds me of something Ben Shapiro said. Maybe it was in the debate with Alex O'Connor, maybe it was another thing, I forget. But he said that this passage about, keep her for a month and shave her hair and whatnot, that was actually to reduce the amount of SA going on. Because if not for that, all the soldiers would just take all the women and take turns.
Yeah,
I'm
they
just having
just
a
have
hard
strict
time
rules about it.
trying to imagine what it would be like to live in a situation like this, and knowing how many people who don't have any idea what it was like to live in that situation want to live there because they can't even put it together. Oh, it's biblical time. It's moral family values and the power of God and all that horse shit. So you've got all these girls that, oh, our family is dying. Everybody we know is dying. And if we don't want to get cut aside or fed to dogs, we better look real cute so that we can be raped by the guys who killed all our family. And that's the best you can hope for. And there's not a thought or opinion or value beyond that. That's it. You're cattle.
Okay.
Barbaric times.
Okay, on you may take her as your wife. Tigay notes that Chazal took a dim view of marriage with captives. They regarded such unions as motivated by lust, and they considered the present law as a concession to the likelihood that they would take place, whether permitted or not. Rashi, for example, writes, Scripture is speaking only in view of man's evil inclination, for if the Holy One, blessed be he, would not permit her, he would live with her illicitly. End quote. According to Tigay, Chazal took verses 12 to 13 as designed to delay and ideally discourage such a marriage by making the woman unattractive. On verse
Yeah, it's probably that is rabbinical commentary, not ad hoc, but like realizing like this doesn't make sense, and how do we make it fit? But maybe I don't know if the original purpose was to discourage them from marrying. It seems more like probably was a ritual purity thing, and that's it.
On verse 12, have her shave her head and trim her nails. Josephus in Antiquities 4257 and Nachmanides took these acts as mourning practices over the loss of the woman's family and people. Rashi, Ibn Ezra, and Abravanel wrote that these acts are intended to make the woman uglier, so that her captor might change his mind about marrying her. Chizkuni and Nelson write that by changing some parts of her body, as well as changing her dress, she sheds, quote-unquote, her old life. Nelson also notes that a woman's shaved head can also signify humiliation, as in Isaiah 3:24 and 1 Corinthians 11:5-6. Mari texts also speak of removing jewelry of the head, i.e. hair, and clothes from female captives.
I completely get down with this, that having to get your hair cut is a sign of humiliation.
I agree.
All my life, I would have to cut my hair every time I had to go to court.
And I mean, if we look at the story of the leper, the purity ritual also involves shaving their head. So it's also still possible that this is just a ritual purity thing. Like, oh, you've taken a woman from these dirty pagans.
Kids today, people today can just grow their hair out, and it's not the big thing that it was when I grew up in the 60s and 70s when I was a kid. And even in the early 80s, where if you had hair that touched your collar, you're some kind of a bad person. You need to go to rehab, or you need to be drug inspected or tested or whatever. And then the satanic panic, because I knew people that would be taken to mental asylums if they had long hair, constantly being told, why don't you clean yourself up and get a haircut? I'm clean, fucker. I'm cleaner than you are. But no, I had to literally fight about my hair every fucking day from 1978 to 1985.
I feel that. I had really long hair when I was in school, and every day, oh, you look like a girl. Of course, that was the point, but the people thought they were being hurtful.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to look like a girl, but I did notice when I was hitchhiking, it was a lot easier to pick up rides when my back was turned and I got my thumb out. Then I would turn around and then the car would pull back into traffic.
Okay, on verse 13, mourned her father and mother, either because they died in the war, according to Ibn Ezra, or she'll never see them again, according to Nachmanides. Yeah. Bechor Sho and Chizkuni write, it would be in very bad taste to indulge in carnal relations with such a prisoner while she was weeping for her parents and you were enjoying her body. End quote. Yes. Yeah.
Because 30 days from now, she won't be bothered by that anymore.
No, that's the morning ritual. That's it. It's the whole thing.
That's how long it takes. What's that captive
Stockholm
syndrome?
to
Stockholm. That's it. That's how long it takes.
Yeah. Yep. And Saad Gaon renders it mourned her father and mother's religion, which I have no idea how you mourn religion.
Mourning the fact that she comes from, she was born in a culture that was worshipping the wrong gods.
Yeah. And
how bad it is that my parents are evil or whatever, that sort of thing.
Yeah, perhaps. But it is interesting to note that a former husband is not mentioned here. This led some commentators, like Tigay, to conclude that the law speaks about unmarried women captives. However, Josephus in Antiquities 4257, Chazal in Sifrei Deuteronomy 211, and Rashi wrote that this also refers to married women. Nelson notes that according to 2014, the wives of slain foes were subject to capture, and so this doesn't necessarily imply that she had been unmarried.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean,
married as in like they had been married, they weren't virgins, but not necessarily that they are currently married at this moment. Although it's possible that that still could be the case because they could be, foreign marriages just wasn't recognized. So,
And I didn't include this in my commentary, but I find a comment by Clement of Alexandria from Stromates 3:11-71-4. He writes, the Deuteronomic law wishes males to have responsible sexual relations with their marriage partners solely for the generation of children. This is clear when a bachelor is prevented from enjoying immediate sexual relations with a woman prisoner of war. If he once falls in love with her, he must let her cut her hair short and mourn for 30 days. If even so, his desire has not faded away, then he may father children by her. The fixed period of time enables the overpowering impulse to be scrutinized and to turn into a more rational appetency.
Whereas
is that
in Numbers 31, we read that, you can take the preteen children as prisoners of war. Just take those for yourselves. We don't have a waiting period. We don't have, well, maybe we have an implied waiting period, but we haven't been really specific about it, have we?
Yeah.
I mean, where else
you've
does
gotta
the
spell it out.
Deuteronomic author imply that sort of attitude? You know,
I wonder
it
about
must be.
the 30 days thing. It seems semi-arbitrary. Because of
Semi?
course, there was the whole lunar calendar thing, 30
Right.
days, 28 days, whatever.
Yeah.
But that makes me wonder if it has something to do with that ceremonially unclean business, like women aren't allowed in the tent of meeting if they're on their period. Maybe the point of it being 30 days is so that the captive woman can go through an entire cycle and cleanse out, her previous husband.
Well, the thing is,
30 days.
I don't think they would. I think they would know that wouldn't solve like the whole period problem. So I do think that it is a purity thing, but I think it's a more of a purity thing to do with the culture that she came from rather than womanhood. So I do see this still as strip her of identity and give her a new one.
I just saw a comment that I really liked. Tarb says, well, thank fuck this stream happened. I was almost having a productive day at work.
Happy to help, Tarb.
Yeah, I should note that mourning for 30 days is like a normal period. Because it's considered the same period was observed for I'm quoting Tigay. The same period was observed for Aaron and Moses and is part of Jewish mourning practice to this day.
So when you go to Vietnam and you suffer PTSD, just wait 30 days and then you won't have that problem anymore. The Bible says so.
See, that's just good mental health advice.
The Bible is just full of all sorts of wisdom.
On verse 14, Tigay comments, establishing a sexual relationship imposes obligations on the husband. If he should later change his mind about the captive, he must treat her as a free woman and release her. He may not sell her or treat her as a slave. A similar provision is known from Arabia of the time of Muhammad. Once a woman became pregnant by her captor, it was not proper for her to be sold in the market or even ransomed to her own people. There, however, pregnancy was the determining factor. Here, it is the sexual relationship as such. This provision would have had the effect of causing a man to think twice before marrying a captive, since the marriage would diminish her potential economic value of him, according to Abravanel.
Yeah, see, it's just like when you buy a new car, loses half its value on that first ride.
And finally, on the treat her as a slave, the Hebrew it's lo tit'amer ba. The verb ein mem resh, or the root ein mem resh, appears only here and in 24/7, and its meaning is uncertain. The Septuagint reads, "You shall not break faith with her." Vulgate, "You may not oppress her by might." Peshita, "You must not make gains with her." And Talk of Pseudo Jonathan, "You shall not make merchandise of her." And Tigay notes that the rendering "treat her as a slave" is found in Josephus, Antiquities 4259, Philo in Virtues 115, and Sifrei Deuteronomy 214.
See, the problem I'm having with getting a believing Christian on this show is the same problem I had when I tried to talk Muhammad Hijab to be on the panel of the infidel reads the Quran. You can't sit through this thing and you can sit on Sunday and listen to the preacher read selective parts and then put in his controlled interpretation of those selective parts and then leave out all these other uncomfortable bits. But then you come to these, but if you're reading it all the way through systematically with scrutiny like we're doing, and then, well, look, there's uncomfortable bits. And no amount of bullshittery is going to correct that.
Okay. Yeah, Amber, you can continue this chapter.
All right. Get back to the window.
Firstborn, yes.
Yeah.
If a man has 2 wives, and he loves one, but not the other, and both bear him sons, but the firstborn is the son of the wife he does not love, when he wills his property to his sons, he must not give the rights of the firstborn to the son of the wife he loves in preference to his actual firstborn, the son of the wife he does not love. He must acknowledge the son of his unloved wife as the firstborn by giving him a double share of all he has. That son is the first sign of his father's strength. The right of the firstborn belongs to him. If someone has a stubborn and rebellious son who does not obey his father and mother, and will not listen to them when they discipline him, his father and mother shall take hold of him and bring him to the elders at the gate of his town. They shall say to the elders, "This son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey us. He is a glutton and a drunkard." Then all of the men of his town are to stone him to death. You must purge the evil from among you. All Israel will hear of it and be afraid. If
And then
someone
they'll establish pro-life unions. Go ahead.
if
All will
someone guilty
tremble and despair.
If someone guilty of a capital offense is put to death and their body is exposed on a pole, you must not leave the body hanging on the pole overnight. Be sure to bury it that same day, because anyone who is hung on a pole is under God's curse. You must not desecrate the land the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance.
And so this is why the Romans would not take people down off the crosses.
Did the Romans follow Mosaic law?
No, they
I think
didn't.
the opposite.
But that's exactly why they wouldn't have taken these people down. That's why they wouldn't have buried them on the same day.
It was a
But I
big
don't think it
desecration.
only applied. I don't think it only applied to like Jews, right? I think
Yeah.
the crucifixion was like for others. Or I don't know about.
Okay, what I'm trying to
This is more
explain
to
here is
public
if in
displays of
the
execution.
Hebrew, there's a Hebrew belief that if you don't take these people down, then they're under a curse. But if you're the foreign power and you have a different religion entirely, and you don't respect this one, then you leave them on the pole to show your disrespect and to show that the people you've punished are under a curse.
Well, you also have to remember that they wouldn't have only been crucifying Jews; they would have been crucifying other
Yes.
people as well, and they would have
Yes.
had the same practice.
Yes.
I imagine leaving a relative who's been executed up for a prolonged time would have been seen as offensive, and the Romans would have done whatever they wanted in that regard. So yeah, it's possible that maybe some Near Eastern cultures within their community, they were like, if you execute someone, you still need to bury the body straight away because it's an affront to God to have a body out there. But from a Roman perspective, maybe not necessarily an anti like Hebrew Jewish religion act, but it could have just been like a general idea. This was seen as not nice, and the Romans are like, yeah, let's do it. Make it. It's
Then
an
there's
execution, baby. Like, let's do this.
There's a couple of comments I'll read. My name means dog. Says the period thing is a purity thing to them. No.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. And then Concomatic,
Chonkomatic.
Chonkomatic, of course. Empty gifted one R and Raw membership. Thank you very much. And then John Klein says, will also gifted one R and Raw membership. Okay. Continue.
Okay.
Please.
Yes. Yeah, I'll start my commentary. On verses 15 to 17, Cohen-Zemach comments, the law in verses 15 to 17 intends to limit the rule and authority of the father and to prevent depriving the rights of the firstborn and the hated woman. It grants the firstborn his full rights according to the customary law, even though he is the son of the hated woman. It seems, however, that the lawgiver's main concern is not towards the son, but towards his mother. She would definitely be disadvantaged and humiliated compared to her distress. And here, the lawgiver intends to reduce somewhat the injustice committed towards her. For this reason, the law is juxtaposed with the law of the captive woman. On verse 15.
I just want to say another thing that I read about why these things are put together. So you have the thing about the captive woman from a foreign nation. Then you have, oh, you might hate one of your wives, and then after that we have the rebellious son. And it seems to be like, oh, the writers are kind of implying that, yeah, if you were to marry one of these women, you'll end up hating her, and then through hating her, you will be punished with a rebellious son or something like that.
On verse 15, 2 wives, and he loves one but not the other. This kind of relationship is like that of Jacob between Rachel and Leah, as seen in Genesis 29, 30 to 31, and Elkanah between Hannah and Peninnah in 1 Samuel 1:5. While the word senuah can be read as hated, as seen in the early translations KJV and Lundbom, Tigay writes that it should be understood in a relative sense, less loved or less favored. He also notes that Rabbi Ishmael in Sifrei Deuteronomy 2:15 learns from this verse that he who married 2 women is destined to hate one and love the other. Yeah, I love it. On verse 18, Lundbom notes that this law is peculiar to Deuteronomy, which is commonly seen as a violation to the 5th commandment of the Decalogue. He notes that the case is made strongly by David Noel Friedman, who sees this law as supporting his thesis that in Exodus to Kings, violations of the Decalogue appear one by one. The present law is the showcase violation of the 5th commandment in Deuteronomy. He further writes, in the Covenant Code and elsewhere, it is stated that anyone striking one's parents or cursing them will be put to death. Exodus 21:15 and 17 and Leviticus 29. But Michaelis says the son here is to be punished not because of any crime committed against his parents, but because he is a drunkard who quarrels, disturbs the peace, and endangers the lives of others. He is a problem to the whole community, for which reason the community will, in the end, carry out the punishment against him. Rashi's interpretation is similar. He says this is a case where things can only get worse. After the fellow has squandered his father's property, he will be out robbing people at the crossroads. Later Jewish tradition took the son to be mentally deranged.
All the more good reason to execute them before early. Yeah, one of the interesting things about this whole rebellious son thing is it's so extreme the way that the rabbis, I guess, interpret it to say like, okay, so in order you have to kill him, he has to do this and this and this, and he has to be witnessed, and he has to be warned, and he has to go to this court and then stuff. And they were like, this has never happened. This is impossible for this to happen. Like, what's the point of having a law which could never happen? Yeah, it's kind of it's like the extreme example of like these how the death penalty almost was never done because you need to have 2 witnesses and you need to be warned them and blah blah blah. And I think with the rebellious son, it's even more extreme because you have to eat a certain amount of meat, which is like a crazy amount of meat. I don't know if Tomer, if you have like the numbers or something.
No.
Something I can't remember, and like a log of wine in one sitting.
Yeah. Rashi
it's
quotes
like
this. He writes, they warn him before the wayward rebellious son is not liable unless he steals and consumes a tartamor of meat. Tartamor, I think it's a some measure, and drinks half a log of wine.
Half a lot.
Oh, there's the drunkard part. I was wondering about that. I'm like, why would they call him a drunkard? It's just randomly in there.
And also, I think also he has to be like under the age of 13 and 3 months or something.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes,
I
it's like,
love these arbitrary laws. Somebody mentioned the laws that we don't need to have, the laws for things that will never happen.
yeah.
If extraterrestrials show up in a cubic spaceship and they're all dressed as circus clowns, you must offer lutefisk with whipped cream. Yes, that's what we need to do. These are the kinds of laws I'm reading. This is how I'm interpreting this. Yes, thank you.
Well, I mean, it probably was
Well,
when it was written at the time. It probably was, quite simple. If your son doesn't listen to you and you go in front of the community and be like, "We will kill you if you keep disobeying us," and he still disobeys us. They did kill them, and they probably did it more often than you might think. But over time, they realized.
More often than I might think. You know how many times I heard, "I'll kill you, make another one look just like you."
I gave birth to you. I gave you
I
life.
brought
I
you
can
into
take
this
it
world,
away.
I can take you out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it.
I should also note something interesting that Lundbom notes. Detractors of Jesus called him a glutton and a drunkard, wanting to contrast him with the ascetic John the Baptist in Matthew 11:18-19.
Imagine calling him a drunkard, John the Baptist.
Yeah. So on verse, I'm still on the same verse. I was interested about the word stubborn in the NIV at least. The Hebrew it's sorer, while the Peshitta, Vulgate, and KJV render stubborn. The Septuagint reads disobedient. Targum Onkelos, Rashi, and JPS read wayward, and Targum Pseudo Jonathan depraved. Lundbom and Nelson also render stubborn.
I'm liking this kid more and more.
About they discipline him, in Hebrew, vayisruoto. The verb yud samech resh appears in 436, 8.5, 11.2, and 22.18. As noted in 11.2, Weinfeld wrote that the verb refers to education through corporal punishment. Tigay notes that in the halacha, yud samech resh refers to flogging, as in Mishnah Sanhedrin 8.4. However, Josephus in Antiquities 4.260 and 265, the Septuagint and Targums hold that the parents are to admonish the son orally. Support for this view is found in Proverbs 30:17, which states that the punishing of wayward sons is a matter of God, not humans. Based on this verse, it could be understood that even if the son escapes human punishment, God will not exempt him. On verse 19,
You are muted, Aaron.
Sorry, is it that you spare the rod and spoil the child, or is it that you leave it up to God to discipline the child?
You leave it up to the stones.
I mean, I think the idea is like there's a certain after a certain point, if they're so rebellious that in that time, under these circumstances, you would have killed them, executed them, then you have to say, okay, I wash my hands of this. With like God will look after, and it's not my problem anymore. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think religious people do live by the idea of spare the rod. No, what's the opposite of spare the rod?
Okay, on verse 19, his father and mother shall take hold of him. From this, the Mishnah in Sanhedrin 8.4 decreed that he does not become a stubborn and rebellious son unless both parents wish that he be punished. Friedman, in the words of Lundbom, writes, this law seems to assure that the accusation is not simply a personal dispute between a child and one of the parents, but something both parents have experienced and believe to be a significant enough threat to the well-being of their home and/or community to require severe action. End quote. According to Josephus, in Antiquity 16:365 through 366, Herod used this law as a pretext to kill two of his sons.
So also important to note here, right? So the stoning method is often used for, because as you just noted, like if they're viewed as a threat, right? The stoning method was often used as execution for those convicted of treason. So this might sound weird, but if we compare these laws in order with those of the Decalogue, we can line them up with the Ten Commandments, and these are just extensions of those laws. So it might sound weird, but this one being as an extension of the do not murder law. And I say it sounds weird, obviously, because you literally kill someone, but the way that murder is used is more of like an unjustified killing, right? So if someone is a criminal, you can kill them, and it wouldn't count as murder because it's legal, right? So viewing it in this light, like around here is where we kind of end like the laws about murder, and then next we're going to get into the you shall not commit adultery. So but this would be kind of like an extension of the law not to murder by here's the case in which you can kill, but it's not murder because they were a sufficient threat.
What if they were guilty of the crime of being Midianite?
Oh, big crime. Big crime.
Okay.
Talk about original sin.
Okay, on verse 21, Lundbom comments, Tigay assumes that an investigation will have to take place. All the men in the city will take part in the stoning, since the judgment rendered is a community judgment. The parents are not set to participate, which would be understandable. Actually, parents do not have the legal authority to execute their children, which is seen also in the case of the slandered bride, whose parents are unable to produce a blood-stained wedding garment. 2221, yes, we'll get there. Josephus, in Antiquities 4264, who connects this law to the one following, says that after the son is stoned in the morning, his corpse is exposed to general view for the remainder of the day, then buried at night. Michaelis notes this punishment as being particularly severe, but says it should be remembered that the ancients had no prisons such as we have in modern times, where incorrigible sons, such as the present one, could be kept out of society. Imprisonment in antiquity was not a means of punishment per se. It was for detaining individuals until a decision could be made on what to do with them, whether to free them or put them to death. On verse 22, their body is exposed on a pole. The Hebrew it's vetalita oto al etz, literally, and you hanged him upon a tree. While the Vulgate, Peshitta, and Temple Scroll 64 through Temple Scroll 64 verses 8 to 9 rendered it as execution by hanging, modern commentators reject this, since the person is already dead, and such a method is unknown in the ancient Near East or in the Bible, excluding Esther. Rather, it refers to publicly displaying the corpse. Such a practice is found in several ancient Near Eastern laws, such as Hammurabi 153 and Middle Assyrian Law A53. Mishnah Sanhedrin 6.4 describes the procedure. Quote, they sink a post into the earth with a piece of wood jutting out. The court appointee then places the dead man's two hands upon I'll repeat it again. The court appointee then places the dead man's two hands one upon the other, ties them, and hangs him by his hands, end quote. Targum Onkelos reads, you shall crucify him on a crucifix. And Targum Pseudo Jonathan, hang him on a beam. Tigay notes that impalement was a method of execution practiced by the Assyrians. Nelson writes that exposure after execution was intended as degrading and would serve as a public warning, seen in Genesis 40:19, 1 Samuel 31:10, and 2 Samuel 4:12. And finally, on verse 23, anyone who is hung on a pole is under God's curse. The Hebrew for God's curse is kelalat Elohim. Peshitta, Targum Onkelos, and Rashi understood kelala here as an insult towards God, since man was created in God's image. Tigay, however, writes that this interpretation does not fit with the context, since if impalement was an offense against God, it shouldn't be performed at all. He further writes, since God is almost never referred to as Elohim in the laws of Deuteronomy, it is quite possible that Sfono's view is the correct one. Elohim does not mean God, but rather spirit, and the clause means that an impaled body is an affront to the spirit of the dead man. Naphtali holds to Naphtali Hertz to Sinai speculates that the means that the requirement of burial by nightfall reflects a popular belief that the spirits of the dead rise up to earth at night, and that the spirit of the executed man would harm the living if it found his body still unburied. If this is the original reason for the prohibition, that may be why Deuteronomy saw fit to add a second reason, more in keeping with biblical law, in the next clause. End quote. And Athanasius in the Incarnations 25, he writes, let me just go real quick. If any of our own people also inquire, not from love of debate, but from love of learning, why he suffered death in no other way except on the cross, let him also be told that no other way than this was good for us, and that it was well that the Lord suffered this for our sakes. For if he himself came to bear the curse laid upon us, how else could he have become a curse, unless he received the death set for a curse? And that is the cross. For this is exactly what is written: "Cursed is he that hangs on a tree." He basically says that the Deuteronomic law, in the Deuteronomic law, it is prefigured that Christ would become a curse for us by suffering death on a cross.
Yeah, classic
Curse.
opium. But yeah,
Yeah.
that is like the theological reason, at least for like the gospel authors, like why it had to be a cross, or why they had to be crucified, is because it's to tie them in to this, prefiguring my fucking ass. But this being used as a foundational text for the gospels, sure, yeah, absolutely.
And I get why, holding the body keeping it on the cross, why that is a sign of shame. Like that's a humiliation, and getting a haircut is humiliation, and we can understand it. And Isaac is demonstrating for us that right now with his.
My haircut?
Yeah.
Indeed. All haircuts are
Mm.
bad. Stop getting them.
I had to, because it was getting too big on the side, so I was starting to look like Einstein.
That would
I
have been
mean,
great.
there are worse looks than Einstein.
Man, I'm trying to grow out the top first, and then the sides will. We'll see if it
The rest
works.
of Tomir's commentary, it reminded me that what you're discussing about having your head impaled upon a stick. For example, it reminded me of my horoscope. Weird Al Yankovic. Expect a big surprise today when you wind up with your head impaled upon a stick.
Oh no.
All right, are we ready to move to 22?
Yeah. And this is also a big one. I have 8 pages of commentary.
We were over an hour on the first chapter, and I was ambitious,
Not
thinking
bad.
we were going to do, but I looked ahead and I realized no, there's no way. We're going to do one chapter an hour is what we're going to be able to do. So I'm going to jump into this one. You shall not watch your neighbor's ox or sheep straying away and ignore them. You shall take them back to their owner. If the owner does not reside near you, or you don't know who the owner is, you shall bring it to your own house, and it shall remain with you until the owner claims it. Then you shall return it. Unless the owner says, "What the hell are you doing with my cow?" And I'm like, "Oh, I was saving it for you," and then they kill you for rustling. You shall do the same with your neighbor's donkey. You shall do the same with a neighbor's garment. And you should do the same with anything else that your neighbor loses and you find. You just keep it in your house until they come asking about it.
I think I think it adds some more things you're supposed to do as well.
Oh, you may not withhold your help, but try to explain to somebody why you've got their shit in your house.
I just found it wandering in the street. I promise.
I found it. I was keeping it for you.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to end up dead under these laws. You shall not keep your neighbor's donkey or ox fallen on the road and ignore it. You shall help to lift it up. What if that happens on the Sabbath?
Uh-oh.
Why would your fellow be transporting something on an ox on the Sabbath?
No, what if like the ox like strayed like during the Sabbath?
Oh,
But it
the
says
strain.
you shall not see your neighbor's donkey or ox fallen on the road. It doesn't mean that they're attached to a cart and that the owner is driving it.
It's not. I think I'm also talking about like when they've got a load on them and they've fallen from the load, not just.
That is not what my translation says.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking of a different part.
Yeah, you
No,
shall
it's verse
help
4.
lift it up.
Yeah. He do not ignore it. Hakem takimimo. You must raise him. In Hebrew.
Okay.
Yeah, you shall bring it. Yeah, you
Yeah, it
shall
doesn't say
bring it
anything
where
about
also
carrying a load. That must be some other part where it says you must help even your enemy lift
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
that's in
Unless-
Exodus.
That's somewhere else, I guess.
That's an Exodus.
Unless, as Jesus argued, if you find that your neighbor's, if you find your neighbor's ox or whatever has fallen into a hole, you must lift it up, even if it happens on the Sabbath. So Jesus is correcting where this oversight happens.
Possibly.
And then verse 5, a woman shall not wear a man's apparel, nor shall a man put on a woman's garment. For whoever does such things is abhorrent to the Lord your God. I'm in trouble. I played Frankenfurter for years.
So I mean, get through verse 12 because it kind of sums up the single idea.
Okay. I understand the coded message of quit interrupting that that Lawrence just shared with me. If you come on a bird's nest, oh wait, I'm just thinking the wrong thing. If you come on a bird's nest,
You're doing it
in
wrong.
in any tree or on the ground with fledglings or eggs, with the mother sitting on the fledglings or on the eggs, you shall not take the mother with the young. Let the mother go, taking only the young for yourself, because that's the way religion works, baby.
It's tradition.
In order that it may go well with you and you may live long, meaning that we won't kill you tonight. When you build your new house, you shall make a parapet for your roof. Otherwise, you may have blood guilt on your house if anyone should fall from it. You shall not sow your vineyard with a second kind of seed. And I'm not talking about coming on the bird's nest now. Or the whole yield will have to be forfeited, both the crop that you have sown and the yield of the vineyard itself. You shall not plow with an ox and a donkey yoked together, because that's too close to mixed marriages.
May
You
lead
shall
to mixed
not
dancing,
wear
as we say.
clothes. You shall not wear clothes made of wool and linen woven together. Nylon polyester blends are damnable. Straight out.
No, they're fine. It's just wool and linen.
Well, in Leviticus, it generalizes. Here it specifies, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You shall not make tassels on the four corners of the cloak
You
with
should.
which you cover yourself.
You should.
You shall.
You shall.
You shall. Oh. It reminds me of that Steve Martin skit. What was it my father always told me? Never. No, it was always. Okay. And then we have laws concerning sexual relations.
Yeah, we should stop here for the commentary.
Oh,
I mean,
boy.
yeah.
It's a bit of a mixed bag, this one.
Yeah.
Don't sow all your seeds in the same bag. Let's just say.
Don't sow all your seeds in the same bird's nest.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the big idea here is, of course, the distinction between the created order, right? So you shouldn't be mixing things that should not be mixed, right? For example, like the woman shall not wear a man's apparel and the other way around, right? So that has been interpreted in a couple ways, especially because it could have meant just clothes or could have meant like weapons in general as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the idea here, as to why you can't do that, as to why you can't sow your your vineyard with 2 kinds of seed. You can't have an ox and a donkey work together. So all those things go with this this idea that mixing made things unpure. So you kind of had to, in line with the created order, as things should be, you kind of had to keep them separate. That was the whole idea for most of these laws.
Mm-hmm. Okay, start my commentary on verses 1 through 4. These verses are reminiscent of Exodus 23, verses 4 to 5, and according to Cohen-Zemach, seem to be an expansion of the original law. The difference between the law of Deuteronomy and that of Exodus is that Exodus deals with the ox or donkey of one's enemy, whereas Deuteronomy deals with one's fellow, in Hebrew, achicha, your brother, literally. Cohen-Zemach writes that these verses hint to the idea that there can't be any haters and enemies among Israel, but everyone are brothers. Compare Leviticus 19:17 and Deuteronomy 25:3. And there is a comment by Caesarius of Aril, which I didn't include, but looking at it, I'll just read it. You are commanded to pull out the ass or the ox which is lying in the mud. Do you then see a Christian like yourself, who was redeemed by the blood of Christ, lying in the sewer of drunkenness and wallowing in the mud of dissipation, and remain silent? Do you pass by and not stretch forth the hand of mercy? Do you merely shout at him or rebuke him or instill fright in him?
No, that's just a Saturday night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On verse 2, until they come looking for it. Tigay comments, according to the halakha, the finder must publicize what he has found, and the owner must prove it is his by describing its identifying marks, as in Mishnah Bava Metzia 2, verses 1 through 7. According to Hittite law 45, the finder must return objects or animals to their owners. According to law 71, the lost animal is first taken to the authorities, probably so that the witnesses can testify before them. According to law 35, it's in Roman numerals, which is a later version of 45 and 71. If he cannot find the owners, he must inform witnesses that he protects the lost object or animal until the owners are found.
Yeah, if you really want to get what the Talmud is all about, read Bava Metzia, which is all about finding a lost property and how wild it goes about all these different little edge cases and laws. There's things about how if somebody loses money, if you find money on the ground, you don't have to return it because it's it doesn't have any identifying markers or anything like that. It's just a coin. Anyone could have lost it, and if someone has lost some money, they don't expect it to be returned to them. But
that was my main source of income as a teenager.
But if you find
I just found
coins,
it.
Yeah. I've found like £20 notes on the street before. Doesn't happen these days, but cashless society and all that. But
Yeah,
no, but
back
if
in the
you
days of cash, I could find a whole purse or wallet full of it.
yeah, if you find a wallet or a purse, you have to announce it and all of that sort of stuff. If you find 3 coins piled up on top of each other in a triangle, that's enough of a identifying mark that you have to announce it. Like you can't keep it for yourself, and
Yeah.
yeah, there's so many little rules and stuff. It's pretty interesting. What you have to do.
Yeah. Okay. On the verse, or maybe I see in comments. If you want me to.
Yeah, I'm going to read the comments. Eric Wander offered 1 Aaron Raw membership. Thank you. Trevor Wright said, if only humans were to behave the same way God behaves, it would be considered a toxic relationship that no one would tolerate. Indeed. And then Rayan Donovan offers $6.66. Rah, rah, rah. Thank you very much. And then Trevor Wright adds that, so does this God not understand that a brother can become your enemy too as well? What is it about the enemy that this God thinks you can fully eradicate? It mentions, not just in Deuteronomy, but of course Deuteronomy is repeating everything else we already seen in Exodus. If your brother tells you that he disagrees with you on religion, you're supposed to kill him.
Yeah, I mean the word is used both in the like sense of like this is your
Yeah.
actual family member, so like even your brother if they're bad, and then it's also used
Yep.
in the sense of your fellow. So if they're not your if they're your enemy, then they're not your brother
Yeah.
in that
I mean,
sense.
I mean in modern Hebrew as well. Like achi, it can mean either my little brother or like my bro.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. On verse 5, men's clothing. The Hebrew it's kli gever. The word kli can refer to clothing in Leviticus 13:49, jewelry Genesis 24:53, weapons in Genesis 27:3, or article utensil according to BDB dictionary. Lundbom notes that kli has a wide range of meaning in post-biblical Hebrew. The Septuagint uses skevi, I believe, which refers to anything worn by a man. He notes Harry A. Hoffner's opinion that kli here refers to a weapon, since a weapon, usually a bow, is a common symbol of masculinity. And several motivations regarding this law have been suggested. Ambrose writes that men and women should be distinguished in their dress as they are in other traits. Ibn Ezra writes that God abhors, quote, the one who changes the works of the Lord, end quote. Rashi writes that Rashi writes that women who dress like men do so in order to mingle with them for the purpose of adultery. And Maimonides in Guide 337 writes that interchange of dress, quote, creates lust and leads to immorality, end quote. He also suggested that idolatry sometimes involved cross-dressing. He cites a book which is called Tumtum, which reads, quote, a male person should wear colored woman's dress when he stands before Venus, and a female, when standing before Mars, should wear a buckler and other armor, end quote.
Yeah, not just that, but I think even like some Hittite laws described
Yeah,
like ritualistic practices
yes,
where
I'm
they
about to get there. I'm glad to get there. So Moshe Tzipor argued that the law is aimed towards magical practices that purport to give manly or womanly attributes to people. For example, a Hittite ritual against impotence, Ain 349, reads, when he comes forth through the gate, I shall take the mirror and the distaff away from him. I shall give him a bow and arrows, and while doing so, I shall speak as follows. See, I have taken womanliness away from thee and given thee back manliness. Thou hast cast off the ways of a woman. Now show the ways of a man, end quote. And Nelson writes that according to cultural anthropology, cross-dressing takes place in many different contexts in human society. Lundbom notes that classical writers reported women dressed as men and men dressed as women parading in the towns and villages of Syria, Cyprus, Asia Minor, and elsewhere. He further writes, in the ancient Near Eastern religion, gods and goddesses liberally switched their roles. For example, a Neo-Babylonian prayer to Ishtar calls her first a lioness, then a fierce lion. A Hittite official requesting relief from his suffering says to his deity, quote, you, my God, are father and mother to me, end quote. One might therefore expect that worshippers of these deities would find it natural to switch male and female roles. All of this was rejected in Israelite religion, nowhere more decisively than in Deuteronomy. Homosexuality blurs the distinction between male and female, and this is not tolerated in the Old Testament. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Now,
Old Testament is pretty much the source of this sort of distinct, very binary distinction that we have in our culture. Where, yeah, if you look in ancient Near East and other non-Western ancient cultures, there was quite a lot of this sort of, I guess you could say, blurring of binaries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Although there is like in the Talmud mention of like other genders as well, which is interesting.
Yeah, you mentioned it previously.
Yeah, I mentioned it before.
Okay, so on verse 6, the mother with the young. In Hebrew, it's ha'em al habanim. Tigay and Nelson write that this phrase appears in descriptions of warfare found in Genesis 32:12 and Hosea 10:4, and seems to be a proverbial expression for total cruel extermination. Tigay writes that its use here may be an allusion to such descriptions. to indicate that taking the mother bird together with its offspring would mark one as ruthless. Weinfeld, however, writes that other laws do not prohibit the slaughtering of animals, which is also cruel. Moreover, taking the young in verse 7 causes tremendous sorrow to the mother. He concludes that there is no consideration here of the animal's suffering, but the restriction of human aggression and teaching boundaries and limitations.
I
On
think this is considered to be a chok, like a law that doesn't have a rational explanation, as far as I'm aware. And it's also because it's so rare. When someone finds a nest or whatever, they tell people about it so that they can like partake in this rare opportunity to fulfill this commandment. Like line up and like put the bird back and then shoo her away, take the eggs, and
Yeah. I found them,
I've
just like
heard
I found
about
my
it.
neighbor's donkey.
Okay, on verse 7, so that it may go well with you. This is similar to the motivation regarding honoring the father and mother in the Decalogue. Tigay writes that this allusion calls to the fact that the present command is likewise an aspect of respecting a parent. He also notes Abarvanel's opinion that the law is aimed to conserve natural resources. Releasing the mother enables her to produce more offspring in the future, and thus helps maintain the supply of food needed by humans. Similarly, Lundbom writes, Michaelis, like Calvin and others, like the Book of Education, thought this law was promulgated in order to protect the species, to keep it from extinction or near extinction. He says the Swedish botanist Carl Linnaeus would understand it better than theological commentators.
Carolus,
Extirpation.
also known as Carolus Linnaeus.
Yeah, but Americans. Extirpation of a species can upset the balance of nature. Linnaeus, in 1767, noted how in the Virginia colony of America, the decision was made to wipe out a certain crow frequenting the fields. But later, it was discovered that damage to the crops was really being done by beetles, and these beetles, without crows to eat them, soon multiplied out of control, so that few crops remained.
It's America.
Then you got the passenger pigeon and the dodo and the Falkland wolf, and yeah.
The dodo was not American.
Yeah, it wasn't American.
Yeah. There's the Falkland
We're
wolf.
guilty of a lot of shit.
Yeah, I'm just saying in
All
general,
that.
like just
But
saying
that
in general,
one
like
wasn't us.
yeah.
Yeah.
The Falkland wolf is interesting because it's like, how did it get there in the first place? But yeah, we don't have any more, so we can't.
While I'm interrupting, Trevor and Wright says, "So does this God
You read
not
that already.
understand?" What? Did
You
I
read that
already?
already? Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, fine then.
I'm just trying to help you, and don't be mean to a stranger. You know what I'm saying? So, verse 8. So, verse 8. Tigay notes that rooftops were used for several purposes, such as drying and storing produce in Joshua 2:6, strolling and socializing in 1 Samuel 9:25, 2 Samuel 11:2, and Isaiah 22:1. Religious rituals in Jeremiah 19:13 and Zephaniah 1:5, and sleeping in warm weather in 2 Samuel 16:22. Thus, the roof required a protective barrier so that people won't fall off it, which seems obvious to us, but
yeah, in my opinion, this is the best commandment in the Bible.
Yeah,
Put a
Weinfeld
roof
notes.
around your flat roof.
Yeah. So,
You
Aaron,
would
you're
think
muted.
that because you're Jewish, and I understand you guys have a tradition of playing fiddle up there.
shut up.
No, I'm just saying, like in general, this is like the most like almost moral thing that there is. Like, but
I share your concern. I hate when people fall through my ceiling.
Yeah.
Damn it, Santa.
Weinfeld notes Nachmanides' opinion that the law here is an explanation of the law, do not profit by the blood of your fellow. It's in Leviticus 19:16. The purpose of that law is to prevent the accidental death of a person, and so might seem like a continuation to verse 7. Eshnuna Law 58 states that if a wall is threatening to fall and the owner does nothing about it after being told about the anger, if it collapses and kills a man, it becomes a capital case subject to the decree by the king.
I like how the wall can threaten to fall. I
Don't
guess
make me
under
do
certain
this.
conditions, if those conditions are not met, I'm gonna fall.
The wall loomed menacingly.
It knows how to negotiate.
So on verses 9 through 11, these laws seem to be an addition to Leviticus 19:19, whose language is more general than that of Deuteronomy, which specifies the types of prohibited mixtures. And I've focused on one verse in verse 11. If I have focused on all of these, it will be very long. So verse 11, Leviticus 19:19 does not specify what types aren't allowed and seems to prohibit wearing clothes from two kinds of any material. Cohen-Zemach proposed that the term for mixed stuff, shatnez, was forgotten at the time of Deuteronomy, at the time Deuteronomy was written, and so interprets its meaning for the people of its time. Josephus, in Antiquities 4208, notes that only priests were allowed to wear clothes made of wool and linen, and indeed several of their garments are made of mixed fabric, seen in Exodus 28:6, 15, and 39:29.
What a
Tigay,
surprise that only the priests get the best stuff. It's like, who made that rule? Oh,
Yeah, right. Shaka.
the priests.
It's almost like these laws, many of them, not these here specifically, but a lot of laws were specifically written in a way to maintain the priests.
I mean, the thing is, like, wool and linen mix blends aren't exactly better quality, as far as I'm aware. Like, normally you only find like woolen suits with linen linings and things like that. You don't really find, a wool linen blend.
How long
very
ago
common.
was this? Do you,
6
do you
years
want
ago.
Egyptian cotton lined with Japanese silk?
That's fine though.
Yeah. So I still have the comment to read. Tigay writes, the status of such garments is thus comparable to that of the sacred anointing oil and the incense that is used in the sanctuary and may not be made or used by laypersons. Seen in Exodus 30:22-37. Bechosho and Chizkuni agree with this as well. And finally, on verse 12, this law is similar to the one found in Numbers 15, verses 37-41. Only there, the term for the tassel is tzitzit. Here, the term is gedilim. As Nelson notes, no explanation is given for this command, in contrast to Numbers, which speaks of memory. He suggests that there is a functional purpose rather than a symbolic one, intended to weigh down the cloak and to permit it to be tied under the body to prevent indecent exposure.
Yeah, I think there are some. I think there are some. I mean, Ibn Ezra brings up the detractors, the deniers. They say that this verse is not talking about. He's talking about the characters. That makes sense. This verse is actually not talking about the tzitzit, since it says you shall make tassels on the four corners of the garment with which you cover yourself, and they take that to mean like at night. So the blanket that you sleep with should have tassels. And so I don't know if the Karaites actually did that or not, but it's interesting to see that this was recognized quite early on as possibly not the same as the tzitzit.
Yeah.
Are we ready for me to continue reading?
Yes.
Okay.
Here we go.
Laws concerning sexual relations.
Yeah.
Suppose a man marries a woman, but after going into her, he dislikes her and makes up charges against her, slandering her by saying, I married this woman, but when I lay with her, I don't find any evidence of her virginity. The father of the young woman and her mother shall then submit the evidence of the young woman's virginity to the elders at the city of the gate, because mom and dad would have bloody sheets.
Oh, there
on
is
hand.
my comment on this will surprise you. I swear to God, it will.
I'm eager to hear that.
Yeah.
The father of the young woman, the city of the gate, that the father of the young woman shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter in marriage to this man, but he dislikes her.
Dave.
Now he has made up charges against her, saying, I didn't find evidence of my daughter's virginity. But here is the evidence of my daughter's virginity. Vaginal blood that mom and dad keep around the house because, reasons.
Which you totally can't fake with pig blood or anything.
Then they shall spread out the cloth before the elders of the town. The elders of that town shall take the man and punish him. They shall fine him 100 shekels of silver, which they shall give to the young woman's father, because he has slandered a virgin of Israel. She shall remain his wife. He shall not be permitted to divorce her as long as he lives. Now, that's important because she has to remain his wife. Otherwise, the father and the mother will have that one sheet of sheep's blood that they will present every time she gets married and divorced. So you got to stick her in the one marriage so they can't keep that scam running. Verse 20. If, however, this charge is true, that evidence of the young woman's virginity was not found, as is often biologically the case, then they shall bring the young woman out to the entrance of her father's house, and the men of the town shall stone her to death, because she committed a disgraceful act in Israel by prostituting herself in her father's house. So you shall purge the evil from your midst, even though the hymen doesn't always break during sex. There's not always blood traced. Not every. This doesn't always happen. But we're just gonna kill people because God is so fucking stupid. Verse 22. If a man is caught lying with the wife of another man, both of them shall die. The man who lay with the woman as well as the woman. So you shall purge the evil from Israel. If there is a young woman, a virgin, already engaged to be married, and a man meets her in the town and lies with her, you shall bring both of them to the gate of that town and stone them to death. The young woman, because she did not cry out for help in the town, and the man, because he violated his neighbor's wife. So you shall purge the evil from your midst. And the evil is not the unfair murder of other people. The evil is that woman didn't cry out or nobody heard her cry out in a town. And the evil is not the subjugation of the women. We don't understand morality yet. Verse 25. But if the man meets an engaged woman in the open country and the man seizes her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. You shall do nothing to the young woman. The young woman has not committed an offense punishable by death, because this case is like that of someone who attacks and murders a neighbor. Since he found her in open country, the engaged woman may have cried for help, but there was no one to rescue her. If a man meets a virgin who is not engaged and seizes her and lies with her, and they are caught in the act, the man who lay with her shall give 50 shekels of silver to the young woman's father, and she shall become his wife, because he violated her, and he shall not be permitted to divorce her as long as she lives. So, if you're a homely, ugly man, and you can't get that beautiful woman any other way, rape her and pay the 50 shekels, and she's yours. Because that's biblical wisdom. Shut the fuck up. Stop it. We don't care. Okay.
Yeah.
A man shall not marry his father's wife, thereby violating his father's rights. Did I skip a verse?
No, I should point something that
Yeah,
this
there's
verse-
It's just a random jump.
no,
Yeah, it's the next verse.
yeah,
the next
Okay, you're right. I'm sorry. I was distracted by somebody who needs to bark at every other fucking dog in the neighborhood. Stop it.
It's 23:1 in the Hebrew.
yeah, it's 23:1 in Hebrews. That's what I wanted to say. It just the Old
Yeah.
Okay.
Testament being not following, I guess.
If a man meets a virgin who is not engaged,
That was the whole thing then.
Yes, that was it. Yeah.
You
did I
finished.
read the whole thing? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. You had the one line there, verse 30, which in the Hebrew is 23:1.
Yes.
Because
Yeah, reasons.
Because reasons.
But I didn't read 28 and 29.
You did.
I did. Okay, good.
Wait, so why?
Okay.
I don't remember him reading 30 though.
No,
No,
he did.
because there isn't
I
30.
did. I did it. Yeah, I did.
There isn't 30 in the Hebrew Bible. There is
20,
yeah,
right.
23 1.
That's what I mean. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, these are some wild laws.
Yes.
This is some of the most immoral stuff in the Bible. Like, and that's saying a lot. If this is like topping those scales,
It
that's
is.
saying a lot.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, I'll start. On verse 14, slanders her. The Hebrew it's alilot devarim. Lundbom notes that the word devarim could mean either words or acts, deeds, and things. The phrase alilot devarim could therefore denote wantonness of words, i.e., baseless charges, according to the Septuagint, Targums, KJV, and Nelson, or wantonness of acts, i.e., misconduct, according to Tigay. He prefers the latter interpretation, writing that the former makes, quote, and brings out against her a bad name, and, quote, redundant, which may explain why the early translations opted for the former. And about verse 15, Lundbom comments, the parents of the bride will have kept the wedding garment for just such an eventuality, although for them it is also a symbol of family pride. In other cultures, yes, listen. In other cultures, the groom or his parents take possession of the blood-stained garment. The custom of verifying wedding night virginity survives among modern Arabs and Jews, among whom there is more openness about such things than in Western culture. Among the Moroccan Jews, much is made of the girl's virginity being confirmed at the first intercourse. The bridal couple enters the chamber after the wedding ceremony, and not long after, one hears at the entrance, quote, the cry of joy, confirming the virginity of the young girl, end quote.
Joy.
Oh wait,
Yes.
hold on a minute. I'm just trying to think of it. So when my daughter got married, I would have expected in this culture to go into their bridal chamber and check to make sure that my daughter's blood is on the sheets, and then I get to cry. The fuck is wrong with this community?
Have you not watched Game of Thrones when by the Red Wedding?
Oh, the red
And
wedding
they-
was something else.
Yeah, but
I
before
tell
the
you-
red before the red bit stuff. Well, the other
Before the other, yes.
Yeah,
yeah,
I have more.
because they survive, the couple, so they get taken out of the room by the traditional but although with them it's like the girls do it, whatever. But yeah, I think it was probably also followed in in medieval Europe as well, the idea of bedding, consummation and stuff like that.
Well, I have more. The same is true among Kurdish Jews. Here, the groom's mother and sister-in-law wait outside the entrance to the bridal chamber to receive the bloodstained garment, after which the groom's mother displays it for all to see before turning it over the bride's mother, who also calls in neighbors to inspect it.
These people
Yeah.
are fucking weird. Can I just throw
Yes.
that out there?
Listen, you gotta have those witnesses. You gotta. This is the rule of the land.
Don't worry, I'm sure you
Everyone's
can go
gotta
on.
see. It's gotta be.
Don't worry, I'm sure you can go on Etsy
very-
and get like pre-blooded marital sheets and stuff like that.
I'm betting that
It's Etsy,
people
so don't
had,
ask where it comes from.
people had pre-prepared bloody sheets.
Don't we all?
Yeah, that they could just.
I keep it right next
Mom
to my
and Dad-
unyoked heifer.
Yep, mom and dad had plenty of bloody sheets and towels and stuff. Hey, look. Yep, just on demand.
Yeah. And about the town elders, Tigay writes that the elders are not conducting a trial, but act as a public forum to which the parents publicly present the testimony that their daughter was a virgin, and by that they protect her and their good names. The Septuagint and Temple Scroll omit the town here. McCarthy notes Lawrence Schiffman's opinion that Septuagint may have been influenced by the phrase that followed, or it may have been an attempt, quote, to remove an ambiguity, end quote. She, however, proposed that the town was already absent from the volage that the Septuagint and Temple Scroll were using.
I saw this movie where this girl was supposed to read this incantation. They needed to get a virgin to read this incantation that would stop all of the monsters that were taking over their town, because there's all these monsters taking over their town. And she reads the thing, and they're all happy about it, except that the monsters are still there. And this was a kids movie, which I thought was really weird. One of the kids asked, one of these 10 or 12-year-old boys asked this 16-year-old girl, "Are you sure you're a virgin?" And she shakes her head and went, "What do you mean? You don't know?" And she says, "Well, Steve, but he doesn't count."
Reminds me of
it's
that.
also important to note that even though this isn't like a formal trial setting as we would think of it today, like doing the public forum thing was a fairly popular trial format for some crimes in the ancient world. Obviously, different crimes had different trial formats. This is especially seen in Greece, which had 5 different courts, by the way, and one of them was for animals. They would try animals. That's not a joke. I forget the name of it, but that was a
Yeah,
very
animal
real
trials.
thing. Yes,
Sure,
the animal.
why not? Here we put freaking ghosts on trial.
Yeah, that too.
In the United States, there was an elephant, a circus elephant who was sentenced to death by electrocution.
That's Topsy, right?
Um,
I think I remember.
in America, there's a thing where certain times like legally they wouldn't be able to try this person, so you end up with these weird court trials where it's United States versus let me see if I can find it. United States versus a bag of exactly.
Oh yeah, she
you
was
know,
executed. Sorry, I thought of somebody else.
There's a court case where it's like United States versus, or the state of blah 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 versus, and it's like a physical object rather than the person. Because if it was against a person, then there's like a limit to how much money the state can seize or something like that.
Yeah, somebody typed in Topsy.
Yep.
Yeah,
See?
it's Topsy.
Knew.
Yeah,
Big brain.
Yeah,
5 head.
yeah. I was thinking about another elephant that she roamed the streets and yeah. So I forgot her name though. So on verse 16, her father will say to the elder. Rashi, based on Sifrei Deuteronomy 2:3-5, writes that this teaches that a woman is not permitted to speak before a man. Because of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
I found it. The one I was thinking of is United States versus article consisting of 50,000 cardboard boxes, more or less, each containing 1 pair of clackables.
What?
That was the name of the trial.
1 pair of whatables?
Clackables, which are like this toy. But 50,000 cardboard boxes, more or less, each containing 1 pair of clackables. So it probably was some sort of fraud trial, but they couldn't try the person; they had to try the boxes themselves.
Okay, so a couple comments.
strange.
Trevor Wright says, "What is the purpose or meaning of the priestly garments in the sanctuary or temple with the precious stones in their clothing?"
I think we talked
the
about...
meaning is the priests get the best shit. So give them your best shit.
I think we talked about this in Exodus.
We did. Yeah.
Yep, we did. And then Tarbox says, "I can explain what's wrong with that community. They are sexually repressed because they get all their advice from an alien eldritch hive mind that doesn't understand humans."
Hey, listen, my alien eldritch hive mind understands humans great, is what it tells me. So, someone also pointed out in the chat, saying, "I wish Lilith was here." Yeah, I think she would have had a field day with these verses.
We'd be all with the blood magic all over this one.
Oh,
nice effect, Ember. Thank you. Yeah, I wish Lilith were here for this, because I wish we had more than just one woman on the panel. There's so much we cover here, and women obviously throughout the Bible didn't get a word in edgewise anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
Continue.
On verse 17, her parents shall display the cloth. Sifrei Deuteronomy 2:3-7, followed by Rashi, interpret this figuratively. The matter is as clear-cut as a cloth. However, Nachmanides and modern commentators Nachmanides and modern commentators understood it literally. Lundbom comments, the blood-stained garment is now spread out in the city gate for the elders to see. This is the extent of the evidence, and is apparently sufficient to decide the case in favor of the bride and her family. No witnesses are necessary, although in later Talmudic sources it was realized that bloodstains were not a sufficient proof, and that various measures sometimes had to be taken on the wedding night to make sure that things went as they were supposed to.
What if, and just hear me out for a moment. What if her dad wasn't a real good dad? That means she dies? What if they had a late night sneaky uncle? She dies on her wedding night? Infinite wisdom of God again?
He knows all.
Yeah. Also, no evidence that she is a wisdom is she is a wisdom. No evidence that she is a virgin is somehow evidence that she's a harlot.
Yeah, exactly, because everything's got to be a dichotomy. It's got to be all the way one or the other.
Yep, they didn't know much better.
So on verse 18, punish him, the Hebrew is yisroto. As noted in 21:18, the root yud samech resh denotes discipline through corporal punishment, and probably refers to flogging. Lundbom, however, notes Daubé's opinion that this refers to the fine in verse 19. On verse 19, Maimonides in Guide 349 and Abravanel note the severity of the triple punishment. Abravanel interpreted these as measure for measure. He is flogged and thereby degraded. Because he brought shame to her and to her family, he is fined because the accusation would have forced her father to return the bride price, and he loses the right to divorce her, which was probably his aim by slandering her. Nelson notes that the 100 shekels of silver fine is double the amount of verses 28 through 29, which is often assumed to be a standardized bride price. Thus, the fine represents twice the amount that the husband attempted to extract. Nelson adds that the prohibition on divorce protects the woman and the heritage of any sons she would bear, in verse 29, and relieves her father of any future responsibility to support her. On verse 21,
That's
Nelson
the value of a child.
Well, I think there is another verse that says that there is the different values depending on the age, and I have a comment on this, I think.
Okay.
On verse 29. So on verse 21, Nelson comments, like the insubordinate son in 21 verses 19 and 21, she is brought out and then stoned by the male citizens of her town. That 21 verses 80 to 21 offers such a close parallel may provide the key to understanding why this is such a sensitive issue. It is a matter of family honor and social integrity. She is executed at her father's house because her offense shames her extended family, the Bet Av. She engaged in sex before marriage while still under her father's authority, while resident in, quote-unquote, the building that localizes the family unit. Perhaps her execution takes place specifically at the entrance of the house because her behavior has both literally and symbolically breached what should have been the impenetrable boundary of her own body and that of her family's integrity. Perhaps her execution is also a shaming, punitive measure against her father. He did not control her as he should, or has even knowledgeably perpetrated a fraudulent marriage. This is a rigorous, dare one say, reactionary law intended to ensure the virginity of brides and perhaps to halt the threat of a laxity seen as a dangerous trend. On verse 22, this law bears resemblance to Leviticus 20:10. In other ancient Near Eastern legal codes, adultery was considered a capital offense. Seen in Hammurabi 129, Hittite 197-108, and Middle Assyrian Law A 14-16. Meir Malul observes a significant difference between the biblical perspective and the ancient Near Eastern law. While the Bible treats fornication with another man's wife as a religious transgression, the ancient Near Eastern law views it as a civil offense. In ancient Near Eastern legal systems, the decision on how to address such cases rested with the husband, who was seen as the victim. He had the authority to spare both the woman and the fornicator. However, in biblical law, this leniency was not permissible. According to the Bible, the laws were divinely given, and no human had the authority to diminish the prescribed punishment. Verses 23 to 24, Lundbom comments, there is no evidence of force here, as in the following example, which means the woman is likely a consenting partner. But Harold C. Washington is not so sure, for he says the law fails to recognize that rape can take place in town. The case, in any event, is treated just like a case of adultery, with both parties being executed at the city gate, compare 17:5. The betrothed girl is here called a wife, Hebrew eshet, the reason being that the bride price has been paid and she is considered legally married, even though the marriage ceremony has not yet occurred, and the husband has not taken possession of her, 27. In Hammurabi 143, a betrothed woman found to be unchaste, running around, and dishonoring her husband is executed by being thrown into the river. According to Raymond Westbrook, her offenses occurred in the past, but need not all have been during her betrothal.
I got a question. I've been thrown into the river, but it was never an execution.
Well, that's an execution, basically.
Do they use a trebuchet?
I don't know.
I think thrown into the river automatically.
Yeet!
Is it crocodiles?
You're not gonna
Are
take
crocodiles a problem?
gonna take the cinder blocks with you.
I can't remember the logic of it. Whatever, it's like if you throw in the river and she floats, she's a witch because
He weighs as much as a
Wait.
duck.
and ducks are made of wood or something. I don't remember because they float.
Yeah,
Science.
yeah, exactly.
Explain to me again how
Decrees from on
ladders
high.
may be used to prevent earthquakes.
Yeah. So, on verse 25, a young woman pledged to be married. Tigay comments, it is not clear why Deuteronomy deals with the possibility of rape only in the case of engaged and unmarried girls, as seen in verse 29. Unquestionably, evidence that a married woman was raped would clear her too, as the halakha rules, seen in Sifrei Deuteronomy 243 and Talmud Ketuvot 51b. Indeed, the Hittite laws prescribe a similar rule of thumb for cases involving married women in Law 197. In general, however, Near Eastern laws like Deuteronomy tend to deal with the issue of rape in connection with engaged and unmarried girls instead of married women. This choice may have been due to experience. Since girls married relatively young, engaged and unmarried girls were usually minors and were less likely to have deliberately sought sexual experience than were married women, who were more sexually
wait.
mature.
Married girls were usually minors in this culture.
Since engaged and unmarried girls.
Okay.
Hence, of those who had been involved in extramarital sex, it was the engaged and the unmarried girls who were most likely to have been forced, and laws dealing with them were the more natural context in which to present the guidelines for deciding the issue of consent. On verse 29, 50 shekels of silver. Tigay writes that some think that this value is the same as the bride price, quote unquote, that the seducer must pay to the father, based on Exodus 22:16. He writes, however, that this is not clear, and that there is no evidence to indicate that the bride price was 50 shekels. He notes that in Leviticus 27:6-7, the value, quote unquote, of a woman aged 20 to 60 is 30 shekels, and the value of a girl aged 5 to 20 is 10 shekels. He writes that 50 shekels probably represents a combination of an average bride price plus punitive damages. And finally, on verse 30, which is in the Hebrew Bible 23, verse 1, Nelson comments, this verse forms a bracket with 22:12 surrounding the marriage laws of 22 verses 13 to 29, with the noun kanaf, corner, skirt, in the context of covering, as in verse 12, and uncovering. A curse on having sex with a stepmother appears in 27:20, but the law here refers to marriage after one's father has died or a divorce has occurred. That is, this is not an incest law, as seen in Leviticus 18:8, but a marriage law. This law protects the integrity of the extended family in a polygamous context by blocking a son's inheritance of his father's wives. Given the young age at which women married, a son of an earlier wife could easily be about the same age as his father's later wives. Compare Genesis 35:22.
And that confuses me because if if sex with your stepmom is prohibited, that's an entire porn category that's quite popular.
And
Well,
as we've mentioned before, that
you are
that porn
correct.
category is just a legal. It's just a legal version of what is actually more popular.
Okay.
It's a shame we don't have our lovely Christian panelist anymore
I
because
did bring no, I did bring
What?
my ancient Christians. I hope that supplemented well.
No, I'm saying for this specific bit about the about how to treat a virgin or a betrothed woman or whatever, and how
mean-
severe it is, because this might explain why Mary might have been had a better excuse.
Well,
Well,
Lawrence says that he's found a replacement. I'm just sure that this replacement is not going to show up until it's a more convenient chapter.
Well, the thing is, I don't know how much he's following along because he's not like extremely tech savvy. And yeah, I know you don't really have to be extremely tech savvy for knowing which topic we're on, but either way, yeah. So hopefully he comes on one of these days because you guys are gonna like him a lot more than you like Pete Town. That's for sure.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
just following along with the conversation would be a big plus.
I'm sorry, I was bored. All right, so we are going to be doing Deuteronomy 23.
Yeah.
This coming Saturday. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That
How
works.
long is this fucking chapter? Because I feel like we've been on Deuteronomy a really long
It's
time.
26.
It's not actually. Well, no. Did you say You said chapter. Did you mean
Yeah, he
book?
said
Sorry,
chapter.
Yep. The Bible is a book, so Deuteronomy is a chapter. Yes, that's
What? Oh my god. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, if
it's
the
34 chapters.
Yeah,
Deuteronomy.
34. It's not like super
Yeah.
long.
But
I
it
don't know
is-
why I thought we should be done with it already. It seems like we went through Genesis, Leviticus, and all of that so much quicker, and we're just plodding through this one. This feels like mud to me. Like we're
It's
barely
legal
making
stuff.
progress.
Legal stuff is so
Um,
dull. I had to read like a good amount of stuff
Well-
on Greek law when I was
I mean, we
doing my
started.
video on it. But
Lawrence, would you say that the laws that we just read are dull?
no,
Be
they're
honest.
not dull. No,
they weren't.
they're
dull.
crazy. They're not dull.
I don't think Deuteronomy's been that slow for us. I mean, we started Deuteronomy less than 2 months ago.
The thing is, it seems longer because we've read many of these laws in different variations, and it's
Yeah.
still a legal text,
Nothing new.
and it's a lot. It's kind of annoying to read the whole process. Like once we get to Psalms, Arn's gonna feel a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah, and we were going pretty slowly at the beginning of Deuteronomy. We did like chapter 1, in one episode, just chapter 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The funny thing about doing Bible studies like this is that, yeah, you've got your legal stuff that you got to plod through and everything. But the thing is, when you start in Genesis, you are the landing gear on a runway. You would go immediately engage and get up to speed. And then it's a lot easier after that.
There will be some hurdles. Like I said, it's gonna suck getting through Psalms, and it's gonna suck getting through a lot of the minor prophets because they basically just repeat stuff that the more important prophets did or said, even though sometimes they try to present it as it's completely brand new, which is really funny. But yeah, it's that kind of stuff.
I'm getting the impression that I'm going to respect the Bible less the further we get into it.
It's a mixed bag.
All right, so looking forward to seeing you guys, everybody, on Saturday. Maybe are we going to have Lilith back on Saturday?
Hopefully.
Okay, I imagine she's on a transatlantic flight probably as we speak. So yeah, we've got no more comments to read. So
I have
see you guys
one
this
thing to
weekend.
say. One thing, well, actually
What's
two.
that?
Join the Discord, and I have my video on St. Patrick out. So if you want to learn about the pretty weird historical setting for St. Patrick and his biographies, and some of the weird stories in them. Like, please do watch that video. A lot of stuff about the Christianization of Ireland and how it wasn't Patrick. Patrick wasn't the first guy. So it's interesting stuff that some people may not know.
Looking forward to it. For seriously, everybody that hasn't seen Lawrence's videos, he does really good work on documentary type videos for religious history. So do check that out.
See, I think I do good work, but I also know that it's not like super interesting to a lot of people. Like, unless they're really feeling.
What are you doing, dude?
I am giving realistic expectations. I know that it can sometimes be dull, but once you actually like dive into the history and get into like the mud, it's actually really interesting. I tell you sincerely, with no hyper bullshit, if they're watching this show, if they're watching this interaction, a lot of people are watching because of you. And if they see the work if they see the work that you do on your own, they'll understand why you're on this show. Well, that, yes, I would agree with, but no, most people are not watching because of me. Let's be very clear. All right.
I didn't say most. I said a lot of people.
A lot. That's a lie.
How much is a lot? Let's get exact numbers.
If it's anything over 5, I would be shocked.
I can almost guarantee it's over 5, and it'll be more than that if you go watch the video that he's talking about.
Yeah,
Peter,
can we put a link? Watch the video.
Can we put a link to that? Because I want people to be able to check that out.
Right now, if you're not subscribed, it's like the first thing you're going to see on the channel, anyways. But
okay,
yeah. Either way, new video, it's out. I had a good time making it. A lot of cool stuff.
Yeah. And the link to the channel is in the chat already, along with everything else.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this episode of Deuteronomy, you can go back to the systematic classification of life. I think it's episode 9, where Aaron talks about the Deuterostomes. I think it's more interesting than.
Thank you,
I don't know I'm not sure what episode that is. Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up.
Okay.
Waiting for Peter to take us.